Hello everybody. In today's video I will debunk the ignorant claim that Israel occupies territories illegally and that Jewish settlements in Judea are illegal. This even sounds weird. I feel very sad that we live in a world of massive lies where I would have to explain why it is okay for Jews to live in Judea. The anti-Israel community of the world is claiming that Israel presently occupies Judea and Samaria and that it has occupied Gaza in the past, and that Israeli settlements in Judea and Samaria are illegal. The problem is that most of them are completely ignoring the history and common sense. They ignore the fact that Israel is just a small part of a larger country that was formed as a national home for the Jews, Palestine. And they ignore that Judea is the land of the Jews, same as Germany is the land of Germans. To help themselves, they simply call it the West Bank. Renaming Jewish land or Jews is not a new practice. Romans renamed Judea to Palestine, Arabs are now calling themselves Palestinians, Britain renamed 78% of Palestine to Jordan, anti-Semites are calling Jews Khazars, whatever it takes in order to demonize the Jewish nation and Israel. Renaming really helps when your target population is ignorant, and since this is the case with most of the anti-Semites, it works very well. But in reality this land is called Judea, and it has been so since over 2000 years ago. In this video, however, I will prove all of their claims to be wrong, and I will do so by using their own tools only. Also, just for the sake of the argument to show how weak their claim is, I will also ignore the past. So basically, the legal claim against Israel is based in the 4th Geneva Convention, Article 49. Let us read it. Individual or mass forcible transfers, as well as deportation of protected persons from occupied territory to the territory of the occupying power or to that of any other country, occupied or not, are prohibited regardless of their motive. The occupying power shall not deport or transfer parts of its own civilian population into the territory it occupies. Okay, now that we have seen this, let us check to whom does this convention apply. In addition to the provisions which shall be implemented in peacetime, the present convention shall apply to all cases of declared war or of any other armed conflict which may arise between two or more of the high contracting parties, even if the state of war is not recognized by one of them. The convention shall also apply to all cases of partial or total occupation of the territory of a high contracting party, even if the said occupation meets with no armed resistance. Okay, so we can see that it applies to high contracting parties signed in the convention. And from other articles it is understood that the meaning of the words high contracting party is a country in general. So one country cannot occupy the territory of another country illegally, and if it has an ongoing occupation, it cannot deport or transfer population in or out. Fine. So which country did Israel occupy? In other words, to which contracting party did Judea, Samaria, and Gaza belong? Let me remind you that initially all of this was Palestine for the Jews. Then it was divided into Jordan and Palestine. Then, after the end of the British Mandate, Jews have declared independence. Since the armed conflict was with Jordan, and since Jews have declared independence in the area, it could be only either Jews or Jordan. Okay. So Jordanian occupation of this territory was illegal, and their sovereignty was never recognized. So this cannot be Jordan. Well, we are left with Israel. I assure you that the day will come when the UN will accuse Israel of self-occupying, but we are not there yet. And Gaza, well, Gaza was occupied by Egypt. Egypt itself never even tried to annex Gaza or to give Gazans Egyptian citizenship. It is obvious that Egypt was the illegal occupying power. And by the way, UN never condemned Egypt or Jordan for the 19 years of illegal occupation. Also, Jordan was preventing Jews from all over the world from visiting Jerusalem, and UN had no problem with it. So it were Jordan and Egypt that illegally occupied Judea, Samaria, and Gaza, not Israel. By the way, Jordan did break some of the rules and did try to annex Judea and Samaria. It had transferred its own population and has given Jordanian citizenship to the population in the occupied territory. Technically, Israel could deport all of the Jordanian citizens to Jordan, but as soon as such talks began between some of the international lawyers, Jordan began revoking citizenship from Arabs who live in Judea and Samaria. In short, since these were territories in which Israel declared independence, and since they were occupied illegally, technically what Israel did was actually liberating the lands and not occupying them. But scratch that. Let us assume again, for the sake of the argument, that Israel does occupy the lands from government X or whatever. Even then their claims are invalid, and this is how. First, the territories were occupied as an act of a defensive conquest, and are kept for security reasons to prevent notoriously hostile states from invading Israel again. By looking at Article 49 again, we can see that deporting or transferring population in or out from the occupied territories is illegal. But in this context, deporting or transferring is referring to a state action, and this rule is for a state. Also, from the firm language of the article, it is obvious that it is talking about forcible transfers only. In short, as long as Israel does not force the people to move to Judea, any settlement there is made by the will of the settlers and cannot be considered as a state action. Otherwise, if I move from Haifa to Beersheba, it would be called that Israel has transferred me there. In conclusion, for the transfer to be illegal, it must be an organized, constitutional, and forced action. I pointed out a lot in my videos that international community and the UN are applying double standards towards Israel in their claims and resolutions. Before you is an excellent example and a hard proof that this is all true. During the negotiation of the 1998 Rome Statute of International Criminal Court, Arab states insisted to add words transferring directly or indirectly to the original 1949 text of the Article 49 of the Fourth Geneva Convention. They did so with the intent to adapt the original 1949 Geneva Convention language in order to render it applicable to Israel's settlements policy. This itself is an international community's acknowledgement of the fact that Article 49.6 as drafted in 1949 is simply not relevant to the circumstances of Israel's settlements, and since it did not apply, they had to alter its text to apply political pressure on Israel. And to dismiss any shade of a doubt in regards to Judea and Samaria, let us enter an alternate reality. Let us assume that Jordan annexed Judea and Samaria, and that in 1967 Israel grabbed the territories by force. Let us even assume that Israel was the aggressor. And yet, on July 31st of 1988, Jordan renounced its claims to Judea and Samaria, or West Bank as they chose to call it. On October 26th of 1994, Jordan has signed a peace treaty in which it dismisses all claims for that territory. No matter how you spin it, no matter which scenario you may imagine, Israel's hold over the territory of Judea and Samaria is 100% legal. It is called sovereignty de jure, something that not many countries can say about themselves. So now that we have covered all of the subjects, I would like to draw your attention to another very interesting issue, the Green Line. Many people, especially the ones of the BDS movement, are claiming that this is the border between Israel and the so-called occupied territories. This is completely false. The Green Line is an armistice line. This line has no political meaning at all. This is not a border between two states. And it was even discussed in that same armistice agreement between Jordan and Israel right after the war, meaning that when the hostilities ended in 1948, Jordan and Israel both kept claiming the other side of the line. The war was still going on until 1967 when Israel regained control over it, and up until 1994 when peace treaty was signed. Pure hate, ignorance, and lack of education are the fuel for the BDS movement. Disinformation is their main tool. Knowledge, however, is best weapon against them, and this is what we are doing here. I want to end this video with a list of illegal occupations that did happen or are ongoing at this moment as we speak. Reason for it is not that I'm trying to divert your attention from the presented issue. The reason is that there were and still are real occupations and lots of injustice in the world. It would be unfair to all of the suffering parties of the world not to be mentioned in this video. Same as not mentioning South Africa when claiming that Israel is an apartheid state. But this, I guess, could be a subject for another video. Thank you for watching.